May 1979. Callaghan was out, Thatcher was in.
Where there is despair, may we bring hope.
The Labour Party establishment was in disarray. The left was resurgent. Deselection, a left-wing leader, and rows over unilateral nuclear disarmament. Cries of intimidation. Sound familiar?
There was a great deal of bullying of members of Parliament, and not necessarily the militant tendency, but others of that kind with a degree of violence. I mean, at that conference, at that year, and there was noted the mood and the style and the hostility. It was ugly by any standard.
By the party conference of 1981, the left-wing Michael Foot had won a surprise victory for the leadership.
Good evening. At Labour's special conference at Wembley today, historic decisions and a major surprise.
For the Labour right, led by the Gang of Four, the fight had become too much to bear.
In the party structures, one of the main ones was, of course, deselection. In effect, what it did was to put each MP at the risk of their own general management committee. It wasn't anything outside, it wasn't the public. It was certainly not their constituents.
Much damage has been done to the cause of democratic socialism.
Not everyone on the right agreed. Roy Hattersley urged the Gang of Four to stay and fight.
Save the Labour Party and leave the Labour Party are mutually incompatible campaign slogans.
The special conference at Wembley was awful because there was a good deal of vindictiveness from the people who were triumphant in their change of the Labour Party constitution. That I went out into the night, pouring with rain, couldn't find my car in the car park, walking around wet and unhappy. And I had one thought, which is, if the ship sinks, I'll go down with it.
It is necessary every now and then within any democratic political system for some people to say, up with this I will not put. There are certain issues which are bigger than party, bigger than myself. They are what is right for the country.
It was agonising, like leaving one's family. It was, or divorcing a once loved husband. Absolutely. And there was a lot of emotional pull in the whole thing.
I had a letter from one person who wrote to me afterwards, and him saying, "No, I'm very, very sorry, Bill. It now means the end of our old practical relationship, but I hope we will not forget our feelings towards each other." And I mean, very easy to weep for that, really.
But once you've made your mind up, it all becomes different and actually becomes challenging, exciting, a test of your strength and a test of your commitment.
On January the 25th, 1981, the press were called to David Owen's home in Limehouse. The split had been made.
There was a sense of liberation, and I think we all knew that we would make changes. We weren't slaves to the Labour Party policy. We would be able to think afresh, and I think that's what the SDP did.
Before long, the SDP was soaring high, polling over 50% in opinion polls.
Next day he came a liberal activist.
They scored spectacular by-election wins.
Visiting the people in Autumn.
Roy Jenkins noted in his diary that he thought he might at last become Prime Minister and break the mould of British politics.
There comes a time when you cannot, your life would be a living hypocrisy, and that's what's wrong with Mr. Healy and Mr. Hattersley, when you advocate policies, major policies you don't believe in.
2 words brought it all to a shattering end, and that was called the Falkland Island.
The Falklands War gave Margaret Thatcher an enormous boost. After all the hype and the hope, the 1983 election was a bitter disappointment. Although the SDP Liberal Alliance took 25% of the vote, nearly overtaking Labour, the SDP took a paltry 6 seats.
When you look at the electoral system, what first past the post makes it very, very difficult for a party to create, start and in one fell swoop become the government. That was, in my view, never possible. We had to build it up, and we had to build it up by taking Labour votes, and we had to smash into Labour in the '83 election because they deserved to be smashed into. And the failure to do that was namby-pambyism, really.
I don't think the SDP bore part responsibility for the defeat. I know it did. The surveys all confirm it did. It had two effects. One was to alienate floating voters who were worried about the Labour Party being too far left. They proved it because these people are left. They split the vote, and they had a general debilitating effect on the party in general, a feeling that we weren't doing as well as we should do. We'd lost good comrades. There's no doubt at all that they had an effect, and they have more responsibility for Mrs. Thatcher than they're prepared to admit.
The SDP had peaked. For the next 5 years, as Labour recovered and drifted rightwards, the party began to decline, before eventually merging with the Liberals. David Owen fought on alone. Relationships among some of the Gang of Four broke down. And now, 35 years on, for these political veterans who've seen it all before, could it, should it, happen again?
I think the situation now is worse than the 1980s. I think our chances of getting back are still there, and we will get back, but it'll take longer. So I think the leader is less susceptible to reason than Michael Foot was, who was a sensible, mature politician, although of the left. I think the trade unions are in a different position from that in which they were in 1979-83. But somebody's got to carry on the fight, and must carry it on internally, not externally. The lesson of the Gang of Four is you don't win by leaving, you win by staying and fighting.
Now it's a different story because Jeremy Corbyn is more or less about being a kind of, I think he's like a Michael Foot son, a kind of idealist who is now being, I think, manoeuvred and to some extent manipulated by exactly the same people I couldn't stand, but they are now not visible in the same way.
You know, under fixed parliaments, there's not going to be an election until 2020. So I wouldn't give a thought to a new party until the end of 2017.
I don't think it's dead. And it may have been buried, but I think it will struggle back. I think the one way out of the mess we're in at the moment is the SDP concept struggling back and becoming a basis on which eventually, hopefully, there can be a new party of the centre-left.